Hey there, kiddos! Now, anybody who's read Erickson or Esselmont knows that there are many distinct tribes and peoples throughout the Malazan world. We can thank their backgrounds in anthropology and archaeology, which helps them create these distinct groups of people that really make the Malazan world feel lived in. One of the most beloved of these groups are the Wickans and their leader Coltaine. We don't really get to interact with many of the Wickans besides a select few, but that doesn't stop me from loving all of the different clans. So today I'd like to explore the Wickans a little bit more in depth and try to understand the cavalry troops that are going to be supporting the 7th Army. To go along with this video, I commissioned a few art pieces from the wonderful Simi of Doom, and I want to show them off, as well as create kind of a companion video for my battle series and try to make it so we can imagine the Wickans a little bit better during these battles of the Chain of Dogs. Hailing from the plains of northeast Quantali, the Wickans are a hardy people. Like many other plains tribes, they developed a very strong horse culture, with the animals taking a central role in their daily life. Honestly, though, the Wickans take it a little bit far and treat horses as family, to the point that it's a little bit weird. Going along with the general description of the Wickans, I typically imagine that they were inspired from the plains tribes of North America, especially since there's a Native American tribe that shares the name of Crow, who also used feathers symbolically. Keeping in mind that there are many distinct Native American tribes that called the Great Plains their home, almost everything lines up between these two groups of people. The only real exceptions are that the Wickans seem to be a longtime horse culture, whereas the Native Americans were fairly new to horses. The Wickans also used yurts, while the Plains tribes used teepees. Because of that, my impressions with how I picture the Wickans are heavily influenced by Native American iconography, which I'll get to a bit more later. When we are introduced to the Wickans at the beginning of Deadhouse Gates, all three clans seem to be a cohesive fighting group and united as a people. However, I feel it's important to remember that the idea of being a united group is a very new concept to the Wickans. The warriors under Coltaine were all brought together by him via war to try fighting against the Malazan Empire. Before the Unification War, all of the Wiccan clans fought each other for territory and herds, and they definitely didn't see themselves as one people. Even while fighting against the Malazans, their alliance was falling apart due to their old bickering. It was Emperor Kellanved himself, their enemy, that forced the Wiccans to gain a cultural identity, and he did this by mocking the feuds that were tearing the alliance apart. He laughed at them and said that he only needed to sit back and watch to see the end of their rebellion. According to Nil the Warlock, Kellanved's words branded the Wiccans' souls, and so when the Emperor offered them unity, the Wiccans knelt and accepted the gift, giving their loyalty to the Empire, but specifically the Emperor. When Empress Lysine took over, she sidelined the Wiccans over questioned loyalty, sequestering Coltaine in a small-town garrison, which she seems to do to pretty much anybody she doesn't trust. However, when it became obvious that Seven Cities was a powder keg ready to blow, she calls up Coltaine and Bult. We don't know what was actually discussed between them, but whatever she said earned the trust of Coltaine, and thus we see him and his warriors arrive in Hisar, with Coltaine becoming Fist of the Malazan's 7th Army. The Wiccans will be acting as a cavalry force supporting the 7th Army, and while they take orders from Coltaine and Bult, they are not really in the 7th's chain of command. Warriors from 3 Wiccan clans arrive in Hisar: the Weasel, Foolish Dog, and the Crow. Each of these clans are distinct from the others, and all supplied roughly 5,000 warriors, along with a number of camp followers. An unfortunate consequence of the tribal warfare of the Wiccans is that when Coltaine united the warriors, damn near every Wiccan of fighting age joined him. This leaves mostly elders and children back home, which puts the continuation of their people in a precarious position to say the least. One more note is that it honestly feels like there should be more clans among the Wiccans, but these are the only 3 that I've seen named, even later on, and I don't even remember hearing a hint of another clan out there. Enough background, though. Let's get into the individual clans, starting with the Foolish Dog. At first glance, they seem to be the most plain of the Wiccan clans, with the typical burnished skin and the weathering of a people who live on the open plains. Hide and leather armor were common, though they did have access to chain armor. Their main force used lancers, and they preferred to use long knives when it came to hand-to-hand combat. They do have a secret that we discovered just before the Battle of Geller Ridge, however, with the clans switching their lances for heavy longswords and pulling out heavy leather armor from their supplies. The armor itself was ornate boiled leather that was dyed in deep and muddy shades of red and green. It was very thick and well padded, with Wiccan runes burned into the armor, giving it a feeling of being ancient even though it appeared to have never been used. And indeed, it hadn't been used. This heavy armor was created during the Wiccan Wars. Supposedly, the idea came from Coltaine. However, the war ended before the armor could be deployed, so it was kept oiled and tucked away. The major benefit of the swords and heavy armor is that now the Foolish Dog clan can act as heavy cavalry, allowing for new strategies to be made. This is especially true when your enemy believes that you only have light infantry and you can surprise them. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, their clan flag is a dog skeleton, so I guess the dog being foolish led to his death. Next is my personal favorite, the Weasel clan. I think they're my favorite since we get to know them right from the very beginning, besides Coltaine and Bult from The Crow. Another big reason is because they are visually distinct. The Weasel clan is described as being blue-skinned warriors with black tattooing across their face and bodies, giving them a somewhat demonic look. This tattooing is described along with the words threaded skin, and I got very frustrated trying to look it up. Searches on Google basically only bring up 2 different skincare methods. However, I was able to eventually find a tribal tattooing technique called skin stitching. I'm not sure if this is what Erickson was referring to, but given the context and history, I think it's pretty likely. Skin stitching is a mostly forgotten art in our current times, as another sad consequence of the colonial era. The process of colonization forced many tribes to be separated from their culture in an effort to erase their identity and force them to assimilate into modern society, especially forcing them into Christianity. However, at one point in time, these tattoos were very common around the world, mostly among tribal societies. Based on information from expeditions and logs from Jesuit monasteries, it actually seems that tattooing was almost universal across the entire North American native population, which I find very interesting given how distinct a lot of these different tribes and tattoos really were. Skin stitching itself is a method of tattoo using a needle and thread. The thread gets coated in ink usually made from soot and oils, sometimes even lamp oil. The process is very time-consuming and painful. Sometimes it would cause infection and even death. As you can imagine, these tattoos were very important to both the cultures that gave them and the individuals who received them. You may be curious about the blue skin, and I am too. After all, Nepans are the only people mentioned to have blue skin, and I believe that's actually where the Weasel clan gets their skin color from. My theory is that they are the Wiccan clan that is closest to the sea, and thus Nepan sailors. Likely, they would have traded with the sailors, and if they showed up fairly consistently and had good trade relations, then it's not out of the question that a decent amount of Nepan blood would spread through the Weasel clan. Besides that, however, I have no clue, since it seemed to be pretty clear to not be woad painting or anything similar to cause the blue skin. Additionally, after their clan was mauled during the Battle of Sakala Crossing, they became much more sadistic, and the warriors even filed their teeth into points. They were largely put in charge of handling the herds, both cattle and Malazan refugees, and are the clan most heavily associated with the Wiccan cattle dog. The final clan is Coltaine's own, the Crow clan. They have the same burnished skin as the Foolish Dog warriors, but they also have a significant portion of their warriors tattooed like the Weasel clan. However, the Crow clan used blue ink for their tattoos instead of black, and they largely consisted of intricate, geometric designs across their entire bodies. One way you can recognize them immediately is an abundance of crow feather fetishes in their hair. Coltaine rides into battle and leads the Crow clan from the front. His clan is likely the largest and most proud, given that the Wiccan war leader is one of their own. The only other large group of Wiccans aren't any warriors. They are the camp followers that are brought along with Coltaine and his clans. Largely made up of women and elders, they are the families of the Wiccan warriors and will be integral to the hopeful survival of the chain of dogs. I feel like horsewives deserve a special mention due to their role within the chain. Given their name, we know they tended to and cared for the horses, which was nearly a spiritual act to the Wiccans. Again, they are a plains tribe with a very strongly developed horse culture, one where horses were treated as family and young children learned to ride before they could even walk. However, the horsewives were also medicine women for their clans as well, treating wounds and illnesses with powders and salves. They helped keep the train of wounded Malazan soldiers and Wiccan warriors moving, easing the burden of the overworked Malazan cutters. And of course, I can't end the video without mentioning the Witches and Warlocks, children who are forced into prominent roles inside the battles out of necessity. You could argue about whether they are children or not, as the Wiccan mages would be reincarnated upon their death. It's a little bit unknown whether this is always happening or if the reincarnating is deliberate. During Empress Lacine's outlawing of unsanctioned magic, the witches and warlocks of the Wiccans were rounded up and spiked to the walls of Unta, leaving them up there to die. Over the course of many days, as each one of them died, a single crow would come and land on them and carry off their souls to be reborn. All except for Sormo Inath, who was so powerful or full of life that no single crow could take his life. Instead, a crow would come each day and take a piece. All in all, it took him 11 days to die, and 11 crows to carry his soul. This is why all of the Wiccan warlocks are just children, though not really children, about 10 years old at the beginning of the Whirlwind Rebellion. Sormo Inath leads them, and acts as an advisor to Coltaine. The warlocks themselves mostly wield spiritual magic, using their power to compel spirits of the land to act and share knowledge. This is especially useful during the Chain of Dogs, since the Warrens were unable to be used during the first few battles because of the Path of Hands. And lastly, we have Coltaine and Bult. What more can I really say about them? Coltaine is the war leader, and as such he stands above and removed from the other Wiccans. Bult acts as his mouthpiece, conveying orders and slinging insults when it would be unseemly for Coltaine to do so. Both of them tend to be fairly stoic, and in conversation they seem to be fans of laconic phrase, which is from Sparta, if nobody else is aware. They appreciate short statements and getting to the point. And while most people in universe don't really appreciate their humor, it's very sarcastic and dry, and quite frankly, it just leaves me cracking up most of the time I see it. And so that is a brief highlight of the Wiccan clans. Hopefully you learned something, or if not, you just enjoyed having a little bit of explanation of things you already knew, which can be pretty fun, just sharing our interests with each other. And with that, if you have any questions, leave them in a comment down below. I'll try to get to them. I'm sorry I've been a little bit late with that. And if you have any ideas for another video that you want to see, let me know. The next one I have planned is going to be the Battle of Vathar Crossing.